moving straight on to our next session because I realize we're running 5 minutes late. Session number 4. So coming to the end of this marathon, I appreciate those of you who are on the panel and also in the audience that have been with us for the past 3 hours. We're coming to the final hour and we will need lunch, including myself, but bear with us. This is the best session yet to come. They've all been excellent, so I'm really pleased to open session 4, Longevity Research and Funding Landscape. And we have great speakers joining us. We've already heard about the Longevity Science Foundation that Gary will be presenting. We have my close colleague, Mike Martin from the University of Zurich, Andrea Meyer from National University of Singapore. Both Zurich and Singapore are ARK global partners. And at the end, we will have Michelle Keller from Deep Longevity that Alex has already kindly introduced. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Gary and welcome him onto the platform, the virtual platform. Gary, are you there? You could switch on your video and I will add you to the stage. Welcome, Gary. Thank you so much for your time. Gary and his wonderful team are leading the Longevity Science Foundation, recently established in Switzerland. So we do have a Swiss team today. So Gary will tell us about it. Gary, would you like to share your own screen?
Yes, could you please share my screen, Richard?
You can, or would you like me to share
yes,
your
please.
slides? Okay, if you give me one moment, I will do that for you. But you can start to introduce yourself. The slides will come on just one moment.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Richard. Thank you for having me here. My name is Gary Zmudze, and I'm happy to introduce myself and the Longevity Science Foundation. A bit of my background. I came to the biotech and longevity sphere after 2 very close family members were diagnosed with incurable diseases. This is cancer and Parkinson's disease. Just a second. Yes. My research showed me that their ailments, and many like them, were on the cusp of being curable with artificial intelligence, new therapeutics, and other innovations. Yet, as many as of us know, these discoveries are decades away from being mainstream. I first attempted to tackle this problem as a VC managing partner at Longevity, which is a fund aimed at supporting early-stage biotech founders. But what we have seen is that some of the most promising research conducted by truly incredible people around the world is not necessarily ready for VC. They are not set up as a company. They don't have any equity to give away. They aren't productizing their discoveries. These are entirely focused on advancing their work and simply need to support to do so. This is where the Longevity Science Foundation comes in. Could you please switch to the next slide? Thank you. We are a Swiss nonprofit organization aimed at advancing human longevity. By funding research and development of medical technologies at their earliest stages, we believe we can help extend the healthy human lifespan by making longevity-related care more accessible. There is no exchange of equity or IP and no pushy investors rushing you to the market. Instead, we provide financial support that we've gathered from people from around the world. We have already received funding requests from the likes of Harvard, Yale, and more, with projects ranging from therapeutics to predictive diagnostics to personalized medicine and more. Could you please switch to another slide? Thank you. So we aim to distribute $1 billion over the next 10 years in non-dilutive project funding. We have already secured $10 million and have received enough donator support to fund projects through June 2022. Next slide, please. Okay, as you can see here, me and my colleague Pietro Ugazzi, we comprise the executive team. I personally started my professional biotech journey in 2016 when I funded in silica medicine. And since that, I have been investing in a variety of different biotech and medicine-related projects, including deep longevity that was mentioned in a previous session. We are guided by an expert in and impeccable visionary board who pre-vet our funding decisions and ensure that all projects considered have high technical merit as well as meaningful impact on the world. I'm sure you will recognize many names here, including Andrea Meyer, who is here with us today, who is a professor of medicine and healthy aging at the University of Singapore. Andrea, she's a visionary who pushed us to commit to funding projects that can have impact within 5 years, an incredible example of her dedication to bringing this care to more people. Evelyn Bischoff, a leading physician and chair of our visionary board, Eric Verdeen, CEO and president of Buck Institute of Aging, Matt Kaberlein, professor of genome sciences at University of Washington, Alex Javaronkov, my friend and researcher and CEO of Insilica Medicine, and our recent addition, Michael Levitt, Nobel laureate and a researcher from Stanford University. Next slide, please. Longevity researchers often face problems related to a lack of funding and regulations around the longevity industry. Bureaucratic funding and processes and a lack of transparency make these problems worse. We wanted to design a model for Charity 2.0, a new and better way to bring transparency to funding decisions, as well as to bring more information about longevity out of the lab and into the mainstream. So here how it works. Our visionary board pre-vets, receives proposals, and makes decisions based on scientific value and potential 5-year impact basis. We then present to our donators a list of the best options, and each of them can vote on which projects they would like to see funded. In case they do not want to choose or would prefer to have some extra guidance on how to vote, they can also delegate their voting rights to one of the visionary board members. We never claim IP ownership. This is a part of our mission to keep longevity care accessible. That way, researchers can focus on the impact, not market value of their work. And yes, we accept both crypto and regular donations. There is a great deal of support for longevity from the VC world and the tech community. A lot of high-profile Web3, crypto, and IT entrepreneurs want to make contributions. These are mostly young people in their 30s that are willing to help push forward longevity research. By accepting digital currencies, we are bringing the longevity field to them. So in everything we do, from the careful selection of our visionary board to the transparent voting process we use with our donators, to the commitments we've made to fund projects that deliver real impact, we think we're making solid strides in redefining how R&D in our sector can be accessible and impactful. And we would like to welcome fellow experts, donators, and organizations that want to collaborate with us. Thank you for taking time to listen to me today, and thanks, Richard, for organizing that.
Thank you so much, Gary, for that wonderful presentation. Really happy to learn about the foundation, and maybe we can discuss a little further during the group time.
Thank you.
Okay, I've stopped sharing my screen. And now it's my pleasure to hand over to Mike Martin from the University of Zurich. I'm sure he's very happy to learn about the Swiss Foundation as well. Welcome, Mike. Let me put you on the stage, as it were. So Mike is the head of the Longevity or Healthy Longevity Innovation Cluster at the University of Zurich. And I was very privileged to spend some time with him and his group, the dynamics of healthy aging at the University of Zurich over the summer. So welcome, Mike, and I'll hand over to you.
Well, thank you very much for organizing this excellent meeting. So I've already had quite a number of insights and aha experiences, and that's always a good sign, I think. Let me just say a few words today about our newest baby in a way. It's the Healthy Longevity Innovation Cluster that is focusing on particular aspects of longevity, and that's its complexity and context dependency. We are a WHO collaborating center on healthy aging. That's why we closely look into what they publish. And as has been mentioned in the keynote at the start of this event, Ritu Sardana has mentioned that accelerating impact is one of the tasks that the United Nations and WHO are calling for. And although we have quite some research and increasing amounts of research on improving functional ability and in longer living societies, I think we miss so far from a university perspective the leverage that can only be created by working together with the private sector. So that's why we're very much interested in setting up an ecosystem, as Harald Gaul has mentioned, an ecosystem that will accelerate translation of the research into practical applications on a large scale. Now, the commitment of this cluster is understanding that healthy longevity is a complex and context-dependent phenomenon. This we stress because in many studies in the aging field, that complexity is statistically or methodologically controlled out. We want to include it to understand better the diversity, the heterogeneity, but also the context dependency of that phenomenon. That's why we dedicated to complexity and context of longevity. And I think that is a difference to what we've been hearing partly at this meeting. We're not, first of all, looking into markers of age-related illness or look at age as an illness, or more generally speaking, not so much focusing on what works in whom. We're very interested in contextualizing behavioral streams because we want to know what works when. So even in the same person with the same marker, not the same intervention will work every time. So the question then is under which conditions, at what times does an intervention work, and how do we get into this when it comes to real life contexts, which are highly variable. So that's the challenge that can be mastered, we believe, given what is available in terms of measurement technology and analytics. So what we've developed in order to move this field forward is 5 technologies. One is an individual data account system, and I will briefly talk about this in the following. This allows to use non-anonymized data for precise within-person tailoring of events. We have a technology to retro-harvest data so that we can basically go back 30 years and even more. So we can basically run prospective studies for up to 6 decades right now within a week based on the retro-harvested data that are available. The third technology is explainable AI for the automatic interpretation of data streams. So it's not just looking for, correlations or significant events, but it's really to support the interpretation, and that needs working together between domain experts and data scientists. The fourth is how we contextualize data streams so that you can bring data from a particular domain, let's say from sleep or nutrition, and you can combine it with other data streams and develop further analytics to extract even more information, and then eventually to provide situation-aware real-time decision support systems. Now, what this looks like, has been developed, and I'm just highlighting that this has been part of the baseline report of WHO. Our task is real-time collection of data on functional ability. And the way to do this would have to be individualized data collection within each person, but also predictor models that work on the data for a given person. So this is requiring high density measurements of real life activities of all kind. That could be brain, heart activities, social activities, movement, mobility, and many others. And this can speed up data collection quite a bit, and it will also have an effect on the trust issue, because these data do not have to be transferred into a central location. They can stay with the owners of the data so that they have control over their data at any point in time. So that is changing the situation also legally for many countries. If the data from different studies indicated or illustrated here. These would be data from different studies. They're filled into individual data accounts. So this is a data account of a specific given person and owned by that person, and only that person can provide access to it. In addition to the data from given studies, you can also collect your own data as a citizen and add to your data account. This is why you don't have the same exact data for each and every one. Now, even if you don't need the individual specific information, we can also use the same technology as anonymized data accounts. The major advantage is that you can run within person statistics given the large amount of data. This is an example of retro-harvested data and recalculated data. This is over a 33 period movement data. And these movement data can be analyzed. So there's information in there. It's not just movement information. You can infer, for example, the level of education from these data for a given person. So here you see half a year of high physical activity and half a year of decreased physical activity. So you know it's a professor who was on a sabbatical that semester and then had to pay for it the semester after. So here's, if you only know what to look for, there's a lot of information in there. And this is one of the things that we have been working on, enriching and augmenting given data sets. So for example, this is excuse me. These are physical activity state data over 5 days. And we developed with colleagues analytics that suggest that the complexity in the movement patterns is different, more predictable on the top, less predictable on the lower end. And this, in this case, the more predictable, less complex pattern is indicative of severe pain. It's from an 80-year-old person. And this is healthy behavior, normal behavior in that person. Note that all other elements, how much activity, how many different types of activities, they were all the same. Really, the complexity measure, that adds that interesting information. To better understand this, however, the movement data for that same person that I showed earlier didn't change. You see over the course of 4 weeks in March 2020. March 2020 in Switzerland was before and green after lockdown, but the change was not in physical activity or movement. The change was that in the second half of March, the person was less physically active given the opportunities to be active, that is, given good weather days. So in relation to the weather conditions, that person reduced its physical activity compared to the first half. So contextualizing the data is the next thing that we're working on and I have built capacity for. It's the semantic analytics, that is the interpretative in analytics for such data. It's helping to include a lot of context information in the modeling at the same time. Now, how this could be used in terms of applications in real-life decision support systems is, for example, here, given, this is from individuals, 13 individuals with cognitive impairments, and one would assume, given they're cognitively impaired, they're most likely also statistically significantly more often disoriented. However, when observed and you applied the semantic analytics to it, it suggests that a person with severe cognitive impairment, and that's in the light color, is in fact disoriented in 0 to maybe 10% of the time. So this is where, instead of developing an intervention that works in the group of people with a cognitive impairment, we now can target the situations in which there is disorientation, which is very rarely the case, and then that can be applied to other fields. Let me mention also, in terms of the individual data accounts that these data come from and have been used for, the individual data account system has been developed with the stakeholders at our Citizen Science Center that's run by University of Zurich and ETH. And so that we can ensure its acceptability, and it's the reason why we by now have thousands of users of that individual data account system already. And it also requires informed individuals who have to know about what these data are useful for and why they are valuable. And this is where Burcu Demiray has been working on a MyUCH3, a scientific education platform that by now is about also to be implemented across different European countries. So this is the ecosystem that Harald was mentioning, and let me just give a quick look into what the ecosystem at the current stage looks like. We have the researchers that are committed to complexity research. They are supported by an XAI lab for healthy longevity and innovation management support. And we form innovation, research and innovation topic groups. And in these groups combine different disciplinary expertises, access to the XAI and the technology of these individual data accounts in order to develop those just-in-time and context-sensitive applications and innovations. And that can also be used for the functional ability assessment in real life. So ideally, we can also monitor in real time the public health of whole populations by understanding and measuring their functional ability in real life context. And based on our global network, we're assessing the comparability of such assessment currently also between global regions. So we not only use Zurich or Switzerland, our collaboration partners who run then similar validation studies coming from Mexico, Europe, European countries, Hong Kong, and then also to Australia most recently. Thank you.
Mike, thank you so much for that presentation. Really good to for everyone to see what wonderful things you're doing in Zurich and with the innovation cluster. Great, thanks for that. Because of time, we will move on to our next speaker. If I can ask her to join the stage. Great, we can see your slides. Thank you, Andrea. Professor Meyer, who's from the National University of Singapore, as you can see in her background, but perhaps today you're closer to London.
Absolutely, I'm from the Netherlands at the moment. I just tried to share my screen. Yes, I think now you can see it, isn't it?
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you, Andrea.
Okay, perfect. So I'm a clinician scientist. I'm an internal medicine specialist, really focusing at the moment to get some longevity medicine clinics up and running in the Longevity Medicine Society, which I think is very important because we have to bring healthcare professionals together to exchange knowledge, guidelines, to write guidelines, and to work on interventions together. And that endeavor I'm doing together with Professor Evelyn Bishop. She was already mentioned, to really get international like-minded physicians together. But today I'm really talking about the need of funding longevity medicine initiatives, because I think we really have to go from hype and hope to evidence, and we have to fill the bubble that we can really fulfill a better and more healthier life for lots of individuals here on Earth and for our society. And this is the reason why we need that. You know, the population is aging. I am at the National University in Singapore, and you might see here that there's a great need. Lots of 60 and 80 plus year olds in the next coming decades in Asia. And that's also the reason why Singapore is really investing in aging research. And why is that really needed? Because Singapore and also other countries, of course, really want to prevent age-related diseases because they need the workforce, and because age-related diseases are really bringing absenteeism up, etc. So we have to care for our workforce. Here you see a recent paper we submitted where we actually can show that we can predict age-related diseases before they occur. We made use of the UK Biobank. It's a fantastic data set where we look at organ aging interactions, and we predicted age-related diseases in a time frame of around about 10 years. And what you can see is that all the organ systems of individuals within individuals are interconnected to each other, and we can predict age-related diseases quite nicely. And therewith, we can inform the healthcare system what we need in the next coming 5 to 10 years, not only for individuals, but also on group level. And as mentioned already in these very nice sessions, thanks for organizing them, is that we have to start early. It's not that the aging process is starting at the age of 40 or 50, but it starts at the age of 20 to 30, and it's very easy already to calculate biological ages in quite younger individuals. Here, just one example of the very nice Dunedin study, where they included individuals at the age of 26 onwards in that city in New Zealand. And of course, in the end, that's the aim of neuroscience, to really optimize our health. And there was optimize longevity and to decrease the period in time we have with diseases. And of course, we know that we can do it because we understand in the last 10 to 20 years why we are aging. You see the hallmarks of aging here. Most importantly, that we get a better understanding of the environmental influences, and big data sets, as mentioned in the last talk too, will help, because we need to understand if it's raining, if the sun is shining, etc., if we are going to move, and how that really relates to cellular influences we have. And in Singapore, we have a very nice project where we actually include all citizens of an entire part of Singapore, where we already have all the data of environmental influences. We will now also take bloods, etc., to determine the biological age, and we have all the data about the health status. I think these kind of initiatives, which are already done a little bit in the UK Biobank initiative or in Lifelines, and now in other countries, will help us to work together to understand aging a little bit better, and if we have to intervene on a cellular level, or maybe even more on environmental levels. That we need more research is absolutely clear. Normally I show this slide because I want to show that senescence, cellular senescence, is absolutely associated with age-related diseases, which is true because you see lots of blue dots, and these are significant associations of different organ systems affected by a disease, and then senescence markers that there is a higher senescence in age-related diseases. However, I would like to show you the slides today because there are not many dots there yet. What you can see here is all human studies of age-related diseases in the relation senescence. And you know that senescence is a huge hype, and I would like to see much more dots, which are individual studies, to actually show that senescence is associated with age-related diseases and other hallmarks too. So we need, I would say, in humans, much more research, and it's very scattered. However, I think our field really worked nicely together in the last 10 years to get ICD-11 codes, which means, and that's very important for me as a doctor, that we can classify aging-related conditions now as a disease via the World Health Organization and the International Classification of Diseases code, which is very important. That we need more work, I think, is very important to mention, and was already highlighted a couple of times during the other sessions, that neuroscience really is evolving, yes, but there's still lack of knowledge, but there's a huge opportunity, which means that education, etc., kicks in, which also have to be funded and evaluated what kind of research we really need to bring up the educational level, not only for healthcare professionals, but also on company levels, but also in the entire society of laymen, for example. And we need much more research in terms of interventions, because that's the next step. I think it's quite unethical to measure all the biological ages of individuals, not having evidence-based interventions in hand, and that's what we need. And I just show you this slide also to show that there is not much evidence yet in humans that we have actually the key and hence how to intervene in the biological aging process. Here I show you the repurposing drugs and the insulin signaling on insulin signaling level with as an outcome cognition. What you can see on the left-hand side, lots of medications being given in clinical care already. Then you see species, and then every dot you see, if it's red, it's a non-significant association and a bad outcome of that trial versus the green ones, that this is a positive trial. But what you can see in the species level, that lots of our investigations are still in animals and not in humans. You see low number of studies which used, for example, repurposed drugs with an outcome cognition. So we have to change that, because otherwise we should not really invest yet in longevity medicine clinics if we don't have the interventions and the evidence-based interventions. I think the TAME study, thanks to Neo Basilei, is really the hallmark study, however, also delayed. So we really have to push the fields to give us more opportunity to start trials and to start that together in an international framework and network. And that's one of the aims of the Longevity Medicine Society. There are, of course, initiatives and positive studies already. I think one of the big discussed studies is this one where 10 healthy men at the age of around about 60 were given growth hormone and some metformin, vitamin D3 and zinc. So really a cocktail of medications where they showed that the epigenetic age was lowered by 2.5 years. However, there are huge problems with that study and with other studies too in terms of methodology, because there was no control arm, etc. So we really have to learn. Very good initiatives, yes, very good outcome, but we really have to prove better. In terms of lifestyle interventions, I think we know what works. As mentioned in the previous talk, we really have to objectively measure the activity levels and sedentary behavior in individuals. We summarized all data with different outcomes, which you can see on the left-hand side, to see if physical activity and sedentary behavior helps to prevent bad outcomes in humans. Yes, it does. And especially the steps is very important. And now really we have to do implementation science studies even more, that we get people to move better to prevent negative outcome. On the other hand side, so this is all the science being published, and my group really tried in the last 2 to 3 years to focus really on synthesizing all these efforts. And on the other hand side, we have a growing market, and I think it's quite clear that this market is absolutely growing, and especially in the neuroscience field, but also in the regenerative medicine field, gene therapy, etc. And we just have to bring not only investment into this market, but also make sure that academics work together much more with businesses to bring real evidence into the human field. And I will show you some examples of really SMEs which are really kicking off with good evidence behind them, like Mudo has been mentioned before, to do epigenetic testing, which is, I think, great, and a great way also to educate individuals, seen on BBC, etc. I think a very good initiative also is the Clock Foundation, because epigenetic markers are also hot in our field, and everybody wants to know the epigenetic age. So I think it's quite good that researchers work together and then make it freely accessible, that not only longevity medicine clinics can use it, but maybe also even GPs, etc. Another one, Molecular U, is not only trying to phenotype individuals, but also give advice, as many other companies too, which is, I think, a good approach. Because if we think that 100% of the aging population is aging at this moment in time, we really need solutions to scale up and to bring the evidence to it. So, which means that the AI should help and will help to really make changes in lifestyle of human beings. And of course, Gary already mentioned that. There's the Longevity Science Foundation. I'm very grateful that I'm on the visionary board to really see that we finance and help individuals to get their studies rolling, which we can really make a change and beneficial, hopefully, in the next coming 3 to 5 years to bring science forward. So in conclusion, I think we really have to translate now from animal models to humans. The time is now. We need the evidence-based biomarkers and the interventions, which lots of centers, of course, do. We also at NUS, and these have to be cost effective, because longevity medicine should not just be for the ones who have the money to pay for it, but for the entire society. We have to invest in healthcare professional education, which is very important, and the longevity medicine framework will help with that. We are starting to launch in Q1 in 2022, so next year, and the longevity medicine society will also be located in Switzerland, and hopefully you will join us there. Thank you very much.
Andrea, thank you. That was a wonderful overview. Thank you for telling us about the hype, hope, and the evidence. I think the evidence is really important. There's a lot of hype, but we're the ones that are hoping. And also as academics, with our industry partners providing a lot of evidence, and the data analytics to consumer data is exactly what we need. Great. So our last speaker of our event is Michelle Keller. I'd like to invite onto the stage, and she'll be talking to us about how we can commercialize longevity research, both from industry and also academic. Healthy aging research is now entering into the commercial sector, especially with all the clocks. So welcome, Michelle. And Michelle is based in Hong Kong with Deep Longevity.
Yeah, hello everyone, and thank you for the introduction. And of course, for the opportunity to contribute to this event. My name is Michelle, and I'm a scientific business development senior manager at Deep Longevity. And our company, as Alex, I believe, has already briefed you, is aiming at extending human health span, utilizing state-of-the-art AI technologies and science. So I'm really honored to have a chance to contribute to this event, because organizers have done amazing work, because they brought together a lot of speakers and each from different backgrounds. So that's why events like this are crucial to establish a holistic approach to providing longevity as a service. So
Michelle,
today,
sorry to step in. You have something on your screen, a participants panel. Perhaps you could.
Yep.
Yeah, there we go. It's gone now. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So today, I'll be talking about how we could effectively translate academic longevity research into practice, and how this can help us achieve the ultimate goal of healthy longevity for everyone. So at Deep Longevity, as you probably have already heard, we focus specifically on aging biomarker identification and the development of biological aging clocks. But we are true pioneers in the industry of deep aging clocks. So we focus on training deep neural networks to predict biological age. So, and this trend started in 2016, when Alex Javrenkov first introduced deep aging clocks. So, as you see, data is the heart of this technology, and it ranges from simple questionnaires to some time series medical data, ECGs, ENGs, and so forth. So using AI enables us not only to have a predictive tool to track the pace of aging, but also having a way to look inside this black box and analyze what aspects of data turn out to be the most useful and important ones for the prediction. So this is how we are getting closer and closer to assess the causality model of the aging process, and how we are striving to identify the key drivers of aging. So in this exact fashion, we have developed longevity as a service solution to integrate multiple deep biomarkers of aging to provide a universal multifactorial measure of human biological age. So as already mentioned by Alex, this ensures not only that we take multifactorial nature of aging process into account, but also at the same time, we make predictions and aging monitoring more accessible for everyone. So at Deep Longevity, we've also developed a system which enabled close interaction with both physicians and patients to track aging and even reverse it. So I would stress it multiple times. So not only slowing down the aging process, but also reversing it. So we've deployed several solutions which deliver longevity as a service, including a web platform, Young AI, an application, and we also provide in-depth reports of one's biological age, along with personally tailored recommendations on how to exactly step-by-step, taking step-by-step, achieve the optimal age and become younger. So that's why we are using aging clock not only as trackers, but also as computational approaches, which can be used to simulate real-world interventions and calculate scenarios and assess their outcomes. So we essentially simulate rejuvenations in silico. So if we lived in an ideal world where longevity ecosystem would be brought into the heart of all industries, who will be the main stakeholders? So this slide is like a spoiler, and the general answer will be everyone. Everyone will benefit from establishing an integrated longevity ecosystem because, okay, every one of us is a live human being, and extending your health span will surely benefit you. But as already discussed today on this exact conference, we know that thinking about extending your health span requires a more long-term view and requires careful planning. And we human beings are accustomed to thinking short-term. That's why we need to explain for every stakeholder what does their industry get from integrating longevity as a service. So the main business stakeholders would, of course, be the clinics and physicians. And we've talked today about the importance of educating physicians and bringing the industry to the age of longevity medicine instead of focusing on disease. So what we are providing for the clinics. So Young AI is essentially a gateway to a much more sophisticated, what we call longevity network. So longevity network essentially is a global aggregation of longevity conscious individuals and enthusiasts and enterprises. So let us work through this network if we were a physician. So the first point, you may already have some clients and you want to focus more on aging. And in this case, you can prescribe your patient to join Young AI and, for example, take the blood age test, but with some other tests which we provide in our multifactorial approach, such as, for example, transcriptomics, these are not still integrated fully into the healthcare system. So in this case, we could direct the patient towards one of the Young AI partnered lab facilities that know exactly how to prepare the samples, so we could analyze the output with Young AI. So all this data would be processed on our platform and sent to you, the doctor, to review. So these reports may be unusual, and that's why we need longevity education to engage physicians and introduce them to key notions of anti-aging industry. And with those specifically individually tailored recommendations, you could guide your patient as you are the physicians, you are like the key element of this system. We simply provide you with the results and our AI-powered recommendations, and you as a physician would be a key element in this chain because you will have then to educate your patient on how this longevity plan works and how to exactly follow it step by step. So it may allow you to also extend your practice and interact with your patients worldwide using the same longevity network as depicted here on the slide. So, of course, this approach can benefit not only individual physicians, but the whole organizations. And the longevity network will essentially provide you as a clinic with everything you may need to embrace the approach to longevity. So you could educate your staff, find the lab service providers, and collaborate with other longevity-focused clinics. So interacting with your patients through longevity network will also increase retainment and engage your patients. So thus we ensure their active involvement and health tracking. So Young AI will also attract longevity physicians. So if you want to introduce your industry to longevity services, Young AI as a platform or like longevity network is the exact place you should refer to. So the second main business stakeholders would be insurers, because as mentioned today, there are several problems in customer retention. And as in the case with clinics, including longevity services, in the insurance package will allow the insurance company to give more value to the customer and, of course, increase retention. And the third main stakeholder would be like probably everyone, employers. So global societal aging has generally been considered detrimental to worldwide economic health, since it reduces the workforce and decreases burden on healthcare system. And as a key part of longevity and increased health span is the freedom to work. And when workers are living healthier, longer lives, an aging workforce can be an opportunity to boost economic productivity from employees. So essentially, that is why longevity network will span all the industries in the ideal future. So thank you, everyone.
Michelle, thank you so much for your presentation. So with that, I'd like to invite Andrea, Mike, and Gary back to the panel, and I will add you to the stage. Mike, next. There we go. And of course, myself. There we go. Great. So thank you so much for all your presentations. I can see one or two questions in the Q&A. Maybe we can address these first. And I think Christoph makes a very important point. 1 billion investment for a multi-trillion market. Any comments on that, Gary?
Okay, my comments here are the following, that we are targeting more than 1 billion in 10 years. And here we got great support from the tech community and from the crypto community. But we are essentially a startup, so we are starting our operations in January next year. So, you know, we need some time to spread the word here. But at the same time, I believe that supporting early stage research will help a lot, and these funds that are committed already that can help the researchers. And main target for the Longevity Science Foundation is to onboard more professionals from different fields, investors. We are planning to give scholarships to talented students that want to dedicate themselves to longevity. So we have a lot of plans, and all together with our colleagues from other foundations and from other supporters, I believe it's possible. That's my take.
That's great. I think it's really important that you mention younger researchers, or maybe those who are not so familiar with our longevity or aging terminology. So I think the education element is as important as the hardcore, molecular research or societal research. It's how we can all benefit by understanding the language of healthy aging, longevity, and so on, and making it more accessible at an undergraduate or even at a kindergarten level. So all of which requires funding. Maybe I can also pick up on a point that Michelle made about commercializing research. Now, of course, everyone's thinking about startups and how we can progress with building a portfolio, investments, and so on. But what about, again, through the foundation's remit, perhaps bringing some of the companies closer aligned to academic research? They may be afraid to access academics, or maybe they don't have the resources to do so, but clearly the academic expertise would help with the commercialization agenda. Is that also something that Deep Longevity is promoting together with the foundation and your other activities, Gary?
Yes, I'm an early investor in Deep Longevity, and I'm very proud of it. And of course, we'll be happy to collaborate, and we're close friends with Silica and Deep Longevity. But we'll be happy, Longevity Science Foundation, we have a collaborative model with this Charity 2.0, where we'll be happy to have on board other VCs or investors or any professional that want to contribute, not only with money, but with other in-kind contributions. So we'll be happy to, to grow our network. And we have such a network. We started building this in longevity, in our venture arm. So we are just trying to expand this with Longevity Science Foundation.
Great. I can see a question in the chat for Andrea and for all of us, actually, where we think the greatest opportunity lies for understanding of longevity mechanisms. Now, I can see we've only got 2 minutes, but this will take the next 20 years to answer. Quick comments, maybe, Andrea, on that.
So we always need molecular sciences, so that's for sure. I think great example, COVID vaccination, great. Molecular science will rule the world. However, we need translation now to see if, for example, supplementation of AKG or NMN, etc., really works in humans. We have lots of evidence in animal models. We have to just make sure that it works in humans too. I think that's the greatest step in the next coming 2 to 3 years. Short answer.
Great. Yeah, well, thank you for that very short comment. I think Ross makes a very important point about how we can translate animal studies, be they worms, flies, mice, and so on, into humans. And I've had this conversation with many because those animal models, great as they are, they do not have bank accounts. And that's what we're talking about, funding through bank accounts, crypto, technology, and the stresses of life, real life, where we are, how we are exposed to pollution, our wallets, shopping, supermarkets, and so on. This is not translatable from an animal model. So thank you for that comment, Ross. And of course, this needs a lot of long-term, longitudinal translational research in the community for the consumer. So that's really important. Mike, maybe I can bring you in very briefly about the funding landscape in Switzerland and across Central Europe, because of course, Switzerland is a very rich in foundations rather than rich in currency, but many foundations funding many important initiatives in Switzerland, but there are not so many longevity foundations. So how do you see perhaps academia and your innovation cluster interacting with both foundations and also investors in the landscape?
I think what currently happens in Switzerland is that the innovation funding by InnoSwiss, for example, is including basic research more strongly. So the Swiss National Science Foundation and InnoSwiss are working together now. They have doubled the amount of innovation funding and explicitly include social sciences and humanities in it. And I think this means that there's a relatively large number of well-trained researchers whose career will increasingly depend on showing that they are good in bringing and developing innovations in that field. And obviously, you know, in Switzerland, life expectancy is among the highest also in the world. So it is also an issue that is very important. Now, one thing I think when talking to foundations, for example, or communicating with foundations, I find that very often they're not so happy about aging being looked at the disease. Because one of the things about aging as a disease is if you want to eliminate aging as a disease, do you also want to eliminate older people from society? So that's an association that happens quite a bit. And I think this is where different angles are useful. You know, one is the biological angle of, you know, what I think has been called anti-aging or slowing the aging process. But I think also that idea of looking into context-aware productivity assessment or productivity support, or what WHO highlighted, functional ability management and support, this could be very important for the foundations, because that would be, at this time, not so much the mainstream, but something that they would be keen on developing further, because it would be helping to initiate a competition to gain information and its value and everything else but the disease, because this is the information that's needed to contextualize interventions. And so combining both areas eventually, I think, would be convincing to foundations and the innovation funding support by InnoSwiss and Swiss National Science Foundation.
That's great. I think the foundations really do need to work together with government entities like InnoSwiss, and also, you know, the corporate sector. So earlier on, we had our colleagues from Nestle speak. I mean, they do a vast amount of research that is actually based in academia, which adds a lot of value and also robust science to their internal R&D. So I think that's a very important area that we can consider, not only in Switzerland, but globally. And of course, we need to consider, as you mentioned, context specific. The context in South America is clearly very different from Switzerland and from the Far East. So there needs to be lots more research funding for this context. What works in Singapore, Andrea, will certainly not work in Mexico or Brazil. So that requires global corporates to work together and to solve this consumer problem. It's not only the clinical interventions, drug discovery, but much more what we can do in the community. And that goes from culture through to lifestyle, through to accessibility to the interventions. And some of that is education-based. Now, I realize that we have gone over time. And we could continue this discussion, and we will continue over the next 20 years. So I won't keep you much longer, and of course the audience. So it leaves me to thank not only the four of you from this session, but all of our many speakers throughout the morning over the past 5 hours. Really appreciate you all taking the time. And of course, the audience. I know we're dwindling a little, but many of you will be listening to this as a recording. We will make it available through our website. So thank you so much to the audience for contributing to the discussion, taking the time to join us. And I shouldn't forget to thank our sponsor, Frontiers in Aging, a new journal, who will be covering the whole of Longevity Week, not only this event, but all of the events. If you have been participating, please feel free to consider submission of articles. And the articles that we all write, not only academics, but our industry partners as well, and funders, add to the education for all. So I think that's really important. And thank you to Frontiers in Aging for giving us the opportunity to submit to your special issues on healthy longevity and consumer data. Apart from that, because of time, I also like to, of course, remind everyone that we are part of Longevity Week 2021. And we would like to thank the Longevity Forum for this opportunity to participate as one of the formal events. Of course, all of the links to these entities and the journal are on our website. So I'd like to thank the organizers of Longevity Week. It's been a wonderful week. It's been packed full of so many events, from government funding, that's UKRI in the UK, through to Master Investor, and many things that we've heard about philanthropy, very relevant for longevity research and our progress over the next 20 years. So there have been a number of events. It's a fast-moving, you could say, landscape or ecosystem. This time next year, we will have another Longevity Week, and I think we will have advanced much further, especially in terms of robust data analytics, and of course, from this panel's perspective, how we can better fund robust longevity research. So with that, I'd like to thank all of the speakers again, and of course, the ARK team. So it's Kasia, who's in the background, helping out with all the logistics and websites and so on. And please do visit us at ARK. So that's kclac.uk/ARK. We do have a PDF booklet that's available online with all of the speaker bios and the titles and so on. So you can reach out to the speakers as well to ask your questions that we haven't had time to answer today. So with that, thank you very much to all of you. And I look forward to seeing you next year, but more importantly, at the next ARK event coming up very soon. So do watch out on our website. Great, so thank you, those of you who are still on the panel, Joanna, Steve, Kasia, Mike, of course, Michelle, Andrea, and Gary. We'll be all in touch. Great. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.